Hey, everybody. Come on down to Jazz Live. Just kidding. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday night parsha shir for JIC Shir and Beer. It's so nostalgic to start to hear the Hanukkah songs. And a good R&B version of Mao Tzor never hurt anyone. So, I'm liking the chill vibes. Alright. Alright, so for tonight's shir, we're going to open up by saying thank you so much, Hashem, for the ability to be alive through this crazy life, through this crazy parsha, through these crazy times, and one night before Hanukkah. Thank you so much, JIC, for the opportunity to share Torah, and thank you to everybody watching for being a part of it, because it's really special. So, just going to give some shout-outs. I don't have air conditioning here. It's really hot. Shout-outs to Danielle Lazar, Zohar Ayatov, Mark Putnick for your support and just being present, and also to Orly Shakuri just for being awesome. And let's take this moment and take refuah shlema to anybody who needs, including my holy Ima, Ron Shoshana Rizal Bachana Chaya, to Anya Chazkel Ovi Israel Zera Kodesh Ben Leah Devar Kivitia, to Elnatan Semach Ben David Ben Leah Devar Kivitia, to Leah Devar Kivitia Bachana Chaya, and anyone else who is hoping for refuah or just wants a beautiful Hanukkah, whether we're going to be alone or with people. I just bless us that as we sit there and we stare into the lights of the Or HaGanuz, of the exact same light that came into the Beit HaMikdash, which is going to come into our home, that light is a real healing for us and everything that we're going through and experiencing in these moments. You know, I'm getting distracted by how good the song is, so it's time to turn it down. Okay, that's enough. Okay, so, something I posted about this week is that I really feel like the stuff that everyone's going through, whether or not you live like a happy, awesome life, just these little crazy tests that everyone's coming up against. I was talking to a friend, I'm like, these are really messianic tikkunim, Like, these are really messianic tikkunim, because really we are at the end of days, and we are just doing everything that we've, like these tikkunim, these fixings that are approaching all of us in this crazy time. I feel like these tikkunim have been waiting for us for millennia, for years, just calling on us to do this work. So that's why we're getting it. It's not random that everyone is just going through so much. So I just wanted to, I like saying things out loud that I'm going through, because mostly we're all going through the same stuff. Okay, so I want to tell you about the car crashes I had this week. Because these are some really special only in Israel moments. And when I was tuning into the parsha, I'm like, I'm living the parsha. So anyways, my family was having a family Shabbat here in Israel. And I really wanted to go, especially since my sister is leaving out of town for a while, and with the new lockdown coming, maybe I wasn't going to see my brother, and it was my 5-year-old niece's birthday, and I really wanted to be with them. So I hooked myself up, and I rented a car, and it was going to be great. And then Friday, the rental car didn't really work. So there I am, like, texting everybody I know, like, can I rent a car? Can I borrow your car? Can I borrow your car? Can I borrow your car? I ended up posting it on Facebook, and I get this whole barrage of, like, how dare you think you could borrow someone's car? It's so irresponsible. You're not insured. That's illegal. Like, I was really getting, like, a lot of, like, crazy feedback. And in my head, I'm like, please, like, I'm like such a good driver. When does anything ever happen when you're in a car? Like once in your life, like nothing's gonna happen, people, right? So Well, so there it was. So finally, with this crazy rush, I had like five different cars lined up. They all fell through. Now it's like 2 o'clock. It takes me like oh no, it's like 3 o'clock already. It takes me an hour and a half to get to my brother's place. I'm coming in against the time on Shabbos, but I finally get this person's car and I'm so excited I get to go and I'm not going to miss my family for Shabbos. And I get to my brother's tiny little yeshuv in the middle of nowhere where there's no traffic and I park my car at the end of the cul-de-sac and I had a beautiful Shabbat with my family. And then we know Eliyahu Hanavi, we're doing Havdalah and all of a sudden we hear oh shoot, that sounded like someone smashed someone's car. Well, we go outside and there it was. The car that I had borrowed from my friend on this premise. Like nothing ever happens to cars and like laughing at all these people on Facebook who were like giving me a hard time. You'll see why I'm telling you the whole story. So I walk outside and it's a significant hit and the bumper is kind of fallen off and it's not my car. And I don't have insurance. And there's a young couple who accidentally backed out of their driveway and smashed into the car. And I took one look at them and thank you so much Hashem for faith. And I said, listen, Hakol min hashamayim, everything's from Hashem. It's absolutely meant to happen. This happens to be your tikkun that you're going to have to pay the money. It has to be my tikkun that I have to go now take the car into the shop and pay this other woman money for when she doesn't have her car and like all this crazy thing. And they were just like, okay, Baruch Hashem, tikkun kaparot. They're this young holy couple. They're just like, it's okay, like we get it. And we're both standing there like, maybe in a different place or different time, people would be screaming at each other, why'd you do this? But like, we're all just standing there going like, Mazel tov, like it's a tikkun kapara. And like, I was really happy that I got to give these people that experience of like no anger and just, okay, so like please God will fix it up, but it's from Hashem. It's from Hashem, right? Okay, fine. So anyways, now I have to tell the person whose car that I had this problem with, and I felt very nervous, but I called and I told her, and of course, what does she say? Oh my God, Baruch Hashem, tikkun kaparot, it's all good, are you okay? Can I help you? Hakol min hashamayim. And she's saying the same thing. She's saying like, wow, like everything's from heaven. This was meant to be. Now the joke goes on because then later that day now I'm trying to go to all the garages and get it fixed and I park the car and boom, now I get another car crash. When I wasn't there, I got a hit and run. And so now the back bumper is smashed and the front bumper is smashed. I'm just like, wow, Hashem, this is really crazy tikkunim that I'm enduring. But you know what? One thing that we learn from the Yosef story, which is what's about to begin in Parshat Vayeishev, is that every single thing that happens is from Shamayim. This is Yosef's whole trip. No matter what he's going through, he's like, this is from God, and this is from God, and this is from God. And I thought, where in the world do you have a story where someone rear ends your car and says it's all from Shamayim? And the person who gets hit says it's all from Shamayim. And then the person whose car it is says it's all from Shamayim. And I was just like, wow, I'm so blessed to live in a place that's all of our reaction to not cheap car crashes. So we want to realize in this week's Parsha that Hashem is behind every single thing. For some reason, we don't know why. But I really want to now offer you this challenge or this thought. And it's a simple thought, but maybe because Hanukkah is starting tomorrow night, and maybe because we're in the Parsha where a lot of people are owning up and turning to Hashem and saying, okay, God, all of this craziness is because of you. What if you would look at that thing in your life that's really bringing you a challenge and you said, okay, what if this was really from Shamayim? So it's such a simple thing that I'm suggesting, but not often do we stop and think of that one thing, or those two things, or that four things. Actually, the truth is I didn't just have 2 car crashes. Every single day has been like this with crazy circumstances for like 5 days already. It's like a joke if I was to tell you the things that have been happening. And I think that it is really this challenge of, okay, Hashem, there's a reason behind this. And it's not just that there's a reason behind this, but what Hashem is doing in all of the craziness of Yosef's life is that he's actually preparing the seeds for Mashiach. And so what if these things that you're going through are actually your messianic tikkunim that you absolutely have to be going through and growing through to prepare you for your personal messianic light. So that's what I want to offer as we go in. Hanukkah, you light your Chanukiah, you're meant to sit there and stare at those candles for a half hour, but you're not just meant to stare, right? You could do whatever you want. You could pray, you could tell Hashem the things you're longing for, but you could also look into that light and say, what if I really believe that right now God was preparing me for my highest high? So I find that super special. So another just really quick thing about Hanukkah, which is so beautiful, is that it says in Shlomo Katz's book on Hanukkah, it's called The Soul of Hanukkah, I believe, and there's this one really special Torah that everybody loves to promote because it's that amazing, and it's called Giving Back Dreams, I think is what it's called. And what it says in it, that what is Hanukkah? Hanukkah is when we give God back his dreams. So you should be like, what are you talking about, God's dreams? Like, God doesn't sleep? God doesn't have dreams? What do you mean? Well, maybe that's not so true, because think of it like this. If you're an architect and you're about to plan a building, you don't just start putting bricks up. You have a design, you have a blueprint, you have a plan. You envision what that building might look like as the sun is shining on it. You envision how it might look like on the horizon. You envision what it will be like from the inside and the outside. You're dreaming about this building, right? Well, so too, before God created the world, God had dreams for the world. And do you want to know what they are? And do you want to know why on Hanukkah we give God back his dreams? Because God's dream for the world was that we would look at each other and bless on each other's light. Unlike what happened with Yosef and the brothers, and this one's tattletaling, and that one's tattletaling, and this one's scheming, and that one's scheming, and there's jealousy, and there's hatred. God's dream for all of this was that one day we get to the place where we looked at each other and we said, wow, she's so awesome and so beautiful. Whoa, he's so rad, he's so cool. Wow, look at that family. So how do we accomplish this on Hanukkah? On what other holiday do you stop and you look at another person's mitzvah, you say, wow, it's so beautiful. But on Hanukkah, you go around and every single Chanukiah you see, you're looking, going, wow, that person's light is so beautiful. That person's light is so beautiful. That person's light is so beautiful. And literally, we're commenting how beautiful each other's light is. And in fact, we don't paskin like this halachically today, but there was an idea that you could make a bracha on someone else's Chanukiah. What does that mean? And it means we're literally making blessings. We're literally blessing each other's light. So that is a whole tikkun for what's about to happen in the parsha, which is as follows. All right, here we go now. So, okay. Hashem, I don't know if I asked you for help yet, but please help me drop into essence and really share the beautiful light of this parsha and all of the crazy, wild things in it, including the fact that my first grade Hebrew teacher accidentally prank called me in the middle of the week, and that's going to tie into the parsha too. Okay, so here we go. We're starting, and just to let you know the format of this year, we're just going to go through the whole parsha, and I'm going to share some of the really awesome things that came out, and we're going to pull some themes by the end. So Parshat Vayeishev, right? Jacob is 108. He settles in the land of his fathers. He's so excited he finally gets to chillax. He's got his sons growing up. Yosef is 17, and like we said, he is like studmuffin. I wore my Joseph's coat. Thanks, Mom. I wore my Joseph's coat for the parsha because, as we know, something that happens is that, well, Joseph would bring evil reports about his brothers, and it literally says evil reports in the pshat. It says that now Jacob loved him more than all of his children, and he made him this awesome Technicolor dream coat, okay? So, you know what's really weird? We've been dealing with favoritism for so long, and in this week's parsha, it's really blatant how bad of an idea this is, right? It says his brothers saw that it was he who his fathers loved the most, and his brothers hated him. And then, because he chose Yosef, and then he dreamed a dream, and he told them about it, and they hated him even more. That's twice, literally, with the word hate. And then they said, oh, what, are you going to try to dominate us? You're going to try to rule over us? And they hated him even more. And so you look at Yaakov and you're like, Yaakov, What are you doing? You're so wise. You're so righteous. Why are you favoring Yosef? Why are you choosing him out among the brothers and creating dissension? Why are you giving him gifts that make him stand out in the world? Like, what's going on? And then I realized, oh my God, wait a second. What Yaakov was doing to Yosef is actually sort of what God has done to the Jewish people. Think about it. God chose us from among the nations and he made us special. And you know what the people were like? Dude, that's not cool. We're jealous. What do you mean you're the chosen people? Like, how arrogant are you? And then it gets worse because God says to us, not only are you the chosen people, but you're the people that's going to bring back my dreams by being this holy, awesome nation that's like so empowered to do the right thing and to dream this dream that one day there's going to be world peace in the world and to never let go of that dream. And not only that, but in this dream, just like Yosef's dreams, we see, we hear how all the nations of the world are going to serve the Jewish people one day. And the nations of the world are like, are you freaking kidding me, you dreamers? We really, really hate you. Really? You think you're going to dominate over us? We hate you. So why, God, why are you doing this to us as well? What is going on? And not only that, but if you think about the fact that Yaakov really chose Yosef, God really chose us. And where did God choose us? A friend of mine pointed out they should be blessed. At Har Sinai. And what is Sinai? It's the root of sin'ah, of hatred. Wow. So it's really crazy. Reb Shlomo gives... Okay, and by the way, before I get into Reb Shlomo, what did the brothers do at this point? Because they hated him so much, they want to kill him. What do the nations of the world do when they hear that we're all chosen and we're here for a mission and we have this beautiful dream, and at the end of the dream, the Jews are going to come out on top? They want to kill us. They want to throw us to the scorpions and the snakes. They want to entice us, just like the Hanukkah story with the Yetzer Hara, the snake, the evil temptations, the things that want to, that put that venom of the evil Yetzer Hara, or like the akrav, like the scorpion, that when they sting us, we get cold. We get cold to the traditions. And then you know what it says? It says that a wild animal tore Yosef apart, goes the story. But you know what? The wild animal tears us apart too as a nation. And that is the wild animal of all of our taivas that bring away from us being this dreamer that's keeping this high hope that's going to bring this great day to the people. There is a wild animal that seduces us, that wants to tear us apart from the vision that we could be so full of good and light. To me, honestly, on a personal rant, I think this is TV and movies. I really do, because it's this wild animal that tears down all our values and normalizes all these things that are not Jewish culture, and it's tearing us apart. And you know what? You know what's even more beautiful is Yaakov refused to console himself. And I believe that even if God is doing this really weird favoritism trip on us, that God is still not cool until we figure out how to fix this favoritism thing. That God is still mourning that we aren't back within the brotherhood of humanity. And so now the thing I wanted to tell you about Reb Shlomo, this most beautiful thing that Reb Shlomo said when people were asking about chosenness. And what's the deal? Because it sounds really arrogant, dear Yosefs of the world. And he says, yeah, we're not just chosen because we're chosen. We're actually chosen to let us know how special and precious we are, so that we can walk around the world and tell all the nations of the world how precious they are too. To be chosen doesn't just mean that you're chosen. It means you're chosen to let the rest of the world know that they're precious. And that they can also hold these really high ideals and be on Team Mashiach and be on Team Jedi Light Warrior, to never let go of this dream for the world that we're going to eventually bless on each other's light, please God. So I just thought this was really, really, really amazing, that everything that happens in this favoritism, mashal, in this analogy of why is Yaakov doing this to Yosef? It's like, whoa, hold on a second. God is doing this to us. And how are we going to handle it? It's not just about Yosef and how he was supposed to handle it and how he handled it well. Are we handling this favoritism well? What are we doing to bring together the brotherhood and unity of the world, to give God back his dreams? Whoo-wee! And by the way, if you didn't think that's crazy enough, the Chatam Sofer points out that kin'ah, jealousy, like the jealousy and hatred that we're trying to deal with between ourselves and between us and the world, kin'ah is gematria Yosef. Woo! Woo-wee. So it's like right in there. And jealousy really is a problem, because jealousy, I learned from Moralea Golem, is saying like, God got it wrong. God got this wrong. That's what jealousy is saying. It was not supposed to be for you. It was supposed to be for me, God. You got it wrong. So it's a real big problem, because we can't, if we're saying, God, you got it wrong, then we're not consulting that voice of Emunah, that voice of faith that says, wait a second, maybe God got this right. Maybe God is preparing the light of Mashiach, and now how do I see it like that? So wow, we're opened up with so much hatred, okay? So again, if you're experiencing any hatred in your life, like it's in the parsha, and we're invited to stop and not feel shame about those feelings, but to look at it and to process it and to see what's really going on and what it is that's causing us those feelings. Okay, so here we go. They're jealous, and that's all we know, right? The brothers are jealous, and the next thing we know, Jacob is sending Yosef out to go to Shechem to find the brothers. It's like, hold on one second, because I got to tell you something. Tosfot says that when Yaakov is now sending Yosef out to go look for the brothers, after Yaakov has already reprimanded him, saying, what about you and your crazy dreams? What's all this arrogance? Why are you saying this? It's been 3 weeks since the episode of Shechem, and now Yaakov is sending Yosef out to Shechem to find his brothers. Sounds like dangerous territory. What is going on? And it even says in the Zohar that actually when Yaakov is escorting Yosef out on the way, that he takes him past Marata Machpelah, and that's where he begins his journey to kind of tune in to the powers of the forefathers. And then this whole crazy thing happens, and he runs into this angel, and maybe it's Gabriel, and he says, where's my brother? And he's like, oh, okay, they're over there, and they finally find him, and now the brothers see Yosef coming from afar. And I want to point out that it's really interesting, because it says, hold on, I just want to see. So it's Lamed Zayin Yud Chet. It says V'yir'u oto merachok. And my friend Telly also commented on this recently, that the brothers, they saw Yosef from afar, right? A lot of times, let's say if we're using this analogy of the Yosef story with the Jewish stories, the nations of the world see us from afar. They see us from afar, and they're like, oh, those Jews are just weird. Okay, we are a little weird. Actually, the best thing my sister said, I live in a kind of religious neighborhood, and my sister came to visit me, and she looks at me, she's like, why are they all running always? And we were like walking past a minyan, and all these Orthodox men in their black suits were like running to get to the minyan, and she's saying to me, why are all Jews running all the time? I don't get it. So we look a little weird, but part of the problem when we have hatred is we're seeing someone from afar. We want to try to see if we could see what it would look like if we really looked at all their life circumstances. And listen, I don't know how to do anything like this. I'm blessing myself to do this. I'm blessing you with this koach. Okay, so here we go. So now, the brothers see him, and they're conspiring to kill him, and then they say, no, we can't kill him, we're going to throw him into this pit, which, by the way, according to the Mishnah in Tamid, says that this pit was 20 amot deep. That's like 30 feet deep. And as we know, it wasn't filled with water, rainbow mine, which means it's a pit of snakes and scorpions. Now, I really want to challenge you something, okay? Even though snakes is my biggest fear, in order to really understand Yosef and what really Yosef had to go through, I have spent many hours on YouTube, looking up pits of snakes and pits of scorpions, because until you have the courage, okay, and this is my biggest fear, but until you have the courage to go to YouTube and look up what a pit of snakes would be like, you don't have a clue what Yosef must have been going through. And every year I tell my students, I give them warning, we're going to now be watching pits of snakes, because like literally, if you really want to understand the Bible, so you really gotta go into the emotional experience of what these people went through. So I challenge you, go to YouTube, look up Pit of Snakes, and you're going to get a whole new perspective on Yosef's experience down there. And it says he was begging them, and he was crying, and he's weeping, and he throws himself at the feet of every brother. He's like, please don't do this, please don't do this. And he's like losing it. He's like literally begging them and screaming screams from the pit. Very intense. You know, by the way, it says that one of the reasons that Reuven was okay to throw him into the pit, even if he did know that there were snakes and scorpions, is because wildlife, it actually doesn't have free choice. So Reuven knew if Yosef was actually guilty of the crimes that the brothers thought he was guilty of, then he would get the death that he deserved to get down there. But here was his thinking. If Yosef was innocent, then God is going to protect him from the wildlife, because the wildlife are just robots under the control of free will. Meaning, if you're in nature and you're not meant to get bit by a snake, you're not going to get bit by a snake. But if you are going to get bit by a snake, that's because God commanded that very animal to bite you. Okay, so I thought that was very interesting, and maybe you do too, if you're thinking about from the perspective of the brothers who knew that God is behind all of this. So anyways, he gets pulled out of the pit, he's sold a bunch of times, and on his way down to Egypt, they're passing Bethlehem. And I don't know if you know this part of the story, but Yosef breaks away from the caravan and he goes running over to his mom's grave, and he's weeping and he's begging her, "Mama, save me." And she says, "Don't worry, Yosef. Don't worry. This is all preordained, and God knows exactly what he's doing with all of it." And it says that call is still going out to all of us from Mama Rachel. And she's saying, "Don't worry, my sweetie. Everything you're going to is preordained, and it's all going to be okay." And so this is what's happening. And then, I don't know if you know this, but there's crazy midrashim about the people who were trying to buy Yosef and what was happening. It wasn't just that he also ran to the grave of Rachel, but it's also there was this crazy storm that burst out, and this insane whirlwind storm, and lightning and thunder. And immediately the sellers knew that Yosef was special. I mean, besides the fact that he was drop dead gorgeous hot. Sorry to say it like that, but that's what all the commentators say, that Yosef was extraordinarily good looking. So they're already confused at why someone so good looking and so poised and so graceful and with such good midot is being sold. But then with this whole storm, they already knew something was happening, and they really wanted to get rid of him. So they're selling him. And it says by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan that when they sold him eventually for those 20 silver pieces, that could be the equivalent of today's $5. So wow, Yosef is going on this whole journey. And here's the craziest thing. Before I forgot to tell you that as Yosef is sitting in the pit, screaming with snakes crawling around him, ew, the brothers actually think that what they did was right, so much so that they had the conscience to go hang out down the street and just sit and have a meal. They broke bread. They had a meal. And actually, let's see if I could pull up this image for you, because I took it. I was looking in Little Midrash Says, and I saw this picture, and I was like, wow, that's so poignant. Okay, Hashem, you going to show me the picture? Let's find it. I want to show the people, because it really touched me when I saw this. Hashem, where are you going to find it for me? I don't know. This is kind of embarrassing. Yeah. Oh, there we go. JK, it's non-existent. But it was this really powerful picture of Yosef sitting in the pit, and then just a couple steps away, his brothers chilling. So there's really a lot of mind-altering questions here of what was going on, what were the brothers thinking. By the way, Reuven wasn't even there. When he got back to the pit and saw Yosef wasn't there, Reuven tore his clothes and said, "Oh my God, he really died." And the question is, where was Reuven? It's some stories off doing tshuva. So it's really, really wild. And now here's the craziest part, is the brothers decide to dunk the coat in blood, and now they're going to send it off to Yaakov ahead of them. And by the way, why? What's one idea why they sent the coat ahead? Because they couldn't fathom dealing with the I can't think of the word, but unbelievable grief that they were to see on the face of their father Yaakov for telling Yaakov that Yosef had died. Now you have to remember, Yaakov thought he completed his mission in the world because he had his 12 sons. He thought, that's it. This is my job. I'm bringing the 12 tribes in. I've got my Yosef. So when he's told that Yosef is dead, he's not told he's dead, but he's hinted to that Yosef is dead, Yaakov's like, oh my God, so I didn't complete my mission in this world. And he knew something was so broken. And I want to tell you the most unbelievable thing. And by the way, there's a midrash it's in Sefer HaYovalim, that says that in this moment, when they also find out that Yosef Ke'ilu died, that Bilhah and Zilpah dropped dead also from pain. So there's a lot of drama going on right now. And also mind you that this is the introduction to the concept of sex trafficking in the Bible. That this really big problem that still goes away, and Hashem Yishmor, please save all the children. He was a youth, he was 17 years old, and he's already part of a sex trafficking ring. So Hashem Yishmor, please save us, Hashem, please save the children, please help anyone, God forbid, that's in such a horrible situation today. We should never know of anything. But, wow, a lot of crazy stuff is happening, and listen to the craziest thing, all right? So they take the coat, and they present it to their father, and what do they say? Hakerna. Do you recognize this? Goat blood dipped coat? Now if you know the words Hakerna and you think back, When was it that Yaakov used a goat and deceived somebody? Yeah, this is exactly what happened with his own brother. He deceived his dad with what's called goats and goats, and now he's getting deceived with goats and goats. And I want to let you know the story doesn't end there. Okay, so now we have the weirdest thing. We're stopping the Yosef story, and all of a sudden we hear about Yehuda. Okay, so here we go. This is really wild story. So Yehuda gets married, and he has 3 sons. He has Onan, and Shelah, or Shelah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And he marries off his first son, to this beautiful girl. Really, she's supposed to be quite extraordinarily beautiful, named Tamar. So if your name is Tamar, this is the source of your name in the Bible. And Tamar wasn't anyone. I actually just recalled this week something I forgot. Tamar was actually said by the Midrash to be the daughter of Shem, as in Noach's son. Yeah, so there's Tamar. It's so wonderful. I love connecting all the stories because it's so awesome to see how the whole Bible actually fits into a greater narrative. So there she is, daughter of Shem. She marries Now a little problematic. He sees she's so beautiful. He's afraid that if he impregnates her, she's going to lose her beauty. So unfortunately, every time they hook up to have babies, he kind of spills his seed on the floor, and then he gets killed because that's a sin. Now, through levirate marriage, she gets to marry the next son, Onan, but Onan's kind of doing the same thing and messing up, and now he dies because he gets punished, and now there's Yehuda with 2 sons that have died because of, like, in his opinion, this woman Tamar, and he is not ready to set up his 3rd son, Shelah, with her. But Tamar knows that through her is meant to come a soul of Am Yisrael, and an especially special one, because Tamar becomes the forebearer of the Messianic line. And so what does Tamar do? She says, if Yehuda is going to mess me around so much and keep me as a widow in his house, or just keep me as a widow back in my father's house for all these years without giving me his son, this is ridiculous. I know he's not going to give me my son, and I have to fix this matzav. So in one of our many controversial biblical stories, Tamar dresses up like a prostitute, and then we could recall the 90s rap song, use a hoe, ho, right? And there she is, putting herself wrapped up in scarves on the side of the highway to seduce Yehuda. Now you gotta say, what? Yehuda, the tzaddik, is seducible by a prostitute on the side of the road? What is going on here? So there's many midrashim, I don't know if you want to believe them or not, that says that there was actually the angel of lust who kept pushing him over to her, pushing him over until he was just like, I don't know what's going on. This is so weird, but he ends up sleeping with her. And of course, impregnates her. And 3 months later, when they see that Tamar is showing, the people come to Yehuda and they say, Yehuda, your daughter-in-law, who is assigned to your next son, she's conceived through harlotry. And Yehuda's like, what? She's conceived through harlotry? What's going on? And then he has her, says, well, if she slept with someone and she's supposed to be there for my son, let's burn her at the stake. And everybody in the whole town, let's gather and let's watch Tamar burn, everybody. And we're going to have a Beis Din. And who is this Beis Din, by the way? It's Yehuda himself, because he doesn't know that he's Nogea B'Davar. He doesn't realize what's going on yet. He doesn't realize he's a part of the trial. And Yehuda's dad, Yaakov, sits on the Beis Din. And Yaakov's dad, Yitzchak, because even though we read about the death of Yitzchak in last week's parsha, he doesn't actually die for quite a few years. So wow, what a tribunal, what a Beis Din. Do you want to be on a Beis Din where the people judging you are Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Yehuda? Woo! I would feel scared. Now here's what's amazing, is in the story where Yehuda and Tamar have their interaction, Yehuda has no money because he's not planning to sleep with a prostitute on the side of the road. All he has is what he's carrying with him. And he says, well, listen, I need to pay you, but I'll pay you a sheep, I'll pay you a goat. Bung, 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 hint, goat. Here's another goat. It's about to be in his face in a second. I'm going to give you a goat for your services, but I don't have it. So take this collateral. And in the pshat, it says take his signet and his wrap and his staff. And in a more esoteric commentary, what they mean by signet, like his sign was his tefillin. And I know that a lot of people say they didn't have tefillin there, but there was some form of tefillin that he had, right? A sign between your eyes, right? Take his signet, his wrap, which was his talit, and his staff, which is actually also staff, but it's the sign of the Messianic line. So he gives these things to her, and when he goes back the next day to find her to pay her the goat, he can't find her, and she's missing, and this is so weird. Okay, so all he knows is that some prostitute somewhere in Israel has his talis and his tefillin and his staff, and this is like a big deal, but what's he going to do? And so the big day comes where Tamar is about to get burned. And by the way, like, a pretty harsh crime for your daughter-in-law, don't you think? I don't even know what to say. So here comes like the most beautiful thing in the whole all of it. Tamar comes out and she says, listen, I'm not going to tell you who the father of this child is, but I will say that this is his signet, this is his wrap, and this is his staff. And if you, the man who owns this, want to come forward, hakerna. Do you recognize this? Same word. Do you recognize this items? Yehuda is getting it back. Same word as the brothers say to Yaakov. Do you recognize this coat? Hakerna. It's the same lineage as the brothers did to Yaakov in the tricking. It's the same words as Yaakov tricked Esav and Yitzchak. It's like, do you recognize this? Are you going to own up? And in front of the entire town, okay? Now imagine the rabbi of your shul, coming forward on Shabbos morning and admitting before everybody that, oh shoot, that woman who was impregnated, it was through me. I did it. And in that moment, Yehuda, by owning up, by facing the shame, by claiming his responsibility, actually claimed the line to kingdom, because kingdom is malchut, which is the ultimate humility. Even Yehuda, his name is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, it's the name of God's name plus a Dalid. Dalid, Kabbalistically, and according to Chassidut, is the letter of humility, of bending over, right? Of that humble servitude, like David HaMelech had this humility. And so Yehuda's name in and of itself represents his purpose, is bringing God into the world, making a Kiddush Hashem by bringing God into the world through our accountability, through our responsibility, through our owning up. And it was this very owning up which secured him as the father of the line of Mashiach. And so we're really asked this week to look at our behavior and see, are we owning up to our mistakes? Because it is that humility, it's that owning up, it's that being willing to be more embarrassed in this world instead of having to deal with it on the other side, to do the fixings in this world, to say, I did it. It's my fault. It's that fixing that fixes the blame of Adam and Eve and brings us back to Mashiach. He stops blaming Tamar. He takes responsibility to himself, even though it is the most embarrassing thing in the world. I can't imagine a more embarrassing situation. But can you imagine the kavod the people had for him in that moment where he said, it was me. It was me. Now, what's really interesting is that Yosef, even though he's Yosef HaTzadik through the whole story, we see him saying, don't do it, I didn't do anything. Now, literally, the Pshat says he brought evil reports, and the brothers hated him, and the brothers are tzaddikim. So I'm say maybe Yosef did do something, but he keeps not owning it. I didn't do it, and he gets into more trouble, right? And then later, with Potiphar's wife, we're going to discuss, I didn't even do it. But yeah, you did, Yosef. And that's why I think that like the Yosef has to come, the like Mashiach ben Yosef has to come before Mashiach ben David, because Mashiach ben Yosef is like, he's the super righteous guy, but like when he messes up, he's still trying to get out of it. He didn't own it. And so he's still growing into his process of becoming Mashiach. But Yehuda, who gets kingdom, when he owns it, when he owns that behavior, then boom, we understand the essence of his name is bringing God into the world through humility. And as we know, Tamar has twins. One of them is Peretz. And when we read about Mashiach ben Partzi, we read about the Mashiach from the line of Partzi, of Peretz, this guy. And Peretz, comes from the word poretz, which means to break through, which means to break through your boundaries, which means on that day, we really not fess up and admit that you're the one that said the mean thing, or you're the one that left the mess, or you're the one that dropped the ball. It's in that moment that you really come into your power and into your kingship and into your humility, and you tune into that Mashiach ben Partzi, that behavior that blasts through the sheepishness, the goat, right? That doesn't admit it, that doesn't hakerna, that doesn't say I did it, as oh, do you recognize this? No. When we blast through that place, it's I don't want to be embarrassed, so I don't want to own it up. When we blast through it, that's when we inherit our messianic light, just like Yehuda. And that's why I personally think that the story of Yehuda and Tamar is spliced into the middle of the Yosef story, because I think it's showing us different ways that you can behave and the different ways it takes you. Okay, and so splice back. Now Yosef is in Egypt, L'chaim tovim v'lashalom, oy baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shakol niya bidvaro. And where does Yosef get sold into Egypt? Well, boy, man, woo-wee! He gets into the house of Potiphar, and things are about to get wild. Well, because here's the problem. Both Potiphar and his wife have a major crush on Yosef, which makes it really awkward, right? It's not just that Potiphar's wife, whose name is either Zelicha or Zulaicha, how cool is that? We actually know her name, is starting to seduce Yosef every day. But the truth is that there's many midrashim that say that Potiphar himself was really jealous, and Potiphar wanted Yosef. So you could see how the tension started to form around this guy in the house, right? Some people say that Potiphar was like so into him that him and his wife would like keilu have fights around it. So every day, it says at least for a year in the midrash, and I wish I wrote down the source somewhere in my notes, that actually okay, so now we're about to talk about a lot of sexual inyanim, so let's just be really mature because it's biblical, and if you want to understand the story, you have to understand what happened. So there's Potiphar's wife every day changing 3 times a day, coming to seduce Yosef. When it means changing her clothes, we're actually talking about all different forms of lingerie that actually got started in Egypt. And by the way, if we want to talk about clothes, this whole parsha, as Morlea Golem says, everyone's taking on their clothes and off their clothes, and off the coat and put on the coat, and put on the thing and this and that, and like everything is like clothes. And we know about clothes already, about beged and levush, that beged can either be to betray yourself, to betray the way you actually are, how you're representing yourself on the outside, or that, like Morlea Golem always says, that I am the aleph and my clothes are the bet gimel daled, they're the outflow of my behavior. And levush, like also coming from the word embarrassment. So here's a theme if you want to go into it, because we see a lot of this theme of our clothing and how we present ourselves and how where our shame is and what we're willing to own up to, and it's all tied back into Garden of Eden. But anyways, here it goes. So here's Zelicha or Zilaicha seducing Yosef every single day. She brings like all her friends around to come check him out. They're like spying at him around the corners. It even says in a midrash that the women would stop and stare that they were peeling their potatoes, and they would end up peeling their fingers because they were so distracted by the gorgeousness of Yosef. And so on this one day, there was a festival in Egypt where the Nile River would rise, it was part of the agricultural season. The Nile River would rise and it would overflow onto all the banks, watering all of the crops. And this was therefore a big celebration in the kingdom. And so everybody would go out to watch the waters of the Nile River rise. And so on this day, Yosef was left alone in the house, and Potiphar's wife feigns illness because she's ready that on this day, this is it. She's finally going to get Yosef. And so the seduction begins, and it's really not a pretty story. and then a really crazy episode happens, right? So she finally gets into the room, and after years of being able to avoid or not get into her seduction, this one day Yosef is just weak. He's just weak, and she finally catches him, and things start happening. And it says that just about when she was about to bag him, let's say like that to keep it kosher, that Yosef caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, or that Yosef caught a glimpse of himself when he saw his father because they were so much looking alike, or that on that day it was actually Rosh Hashanah and he got a glimpse of his father blowing the shofar, calling him, awakening him to do tshuva. And in this moment, as Potiphar's wife is, let's say, like kind of on top of him, so Yosef is like reaching back, like trying to prevent it, doesn't know what to do, and he's like shaking so hard that the craziest midrash says that a drop of semen came out of every one of his fingers. And in that moment, he lost 10 sons that he was meant to have for even getting himself into the situation in the first place. Right, Yosef, your intentions can be good, but if you're putting yourself into a situation where you're going to get yourself into trouble, chas v'shalom, there could be loss. That's why Yosef was meant to have 12 tribes, just like his dad, and he only ends up having 2, Ephraim and Manasseh, because those 10 sons were lost in that moment where Yosef wasn't careful enough to make sure that he was not setting himself up for success. And so there he is, and the semen's coming out of his fingers, and he doesn't know what to do, so he as if like digs his fingers into the ground, like resisting her, like to get off. And it says, well, I learned again from Morlech Golem that Yosef put all of his energy like shaking into the ground, resist. And what the earth did was something amazing in that moment, is it took all of that resistance, all of that energy that it took for a man to resist a woman in lingerie 3 times a day. That's massive resistance. I don't care, man or woman. Who the heck can resist such a thing, especially if she was so gorgeous and so on top of her game? Like, she was not giving up. And he does resist. And then it says, Vayanos, and he fled from the room. And I want you to know that what happens is that the earth saves all of that energy, all of that resistance, all of that power. And years later, on the day that the Jewish people are going to leave Egypt, it takes from that energy that Yosef put into the ground, and says that that is the very energy that the sea used, Hayam Ra'a Vayanos, to then split into its parts. Because when the sea saw that Yosef, a man of flesh and blood, could resist his nature and go against his nature to do for Hashem, so too the sea, whose nature for water is to stay together, would go against its nature, and then it would too split. Because if Yosef could resist and go against his nature, so too the sea could resist and go against its nature to serve God. It's just really incredible to think that the energy that we're putting into things that maybe even the earth is storing, everything is vibration anyway. So when you put in that extra effort to do that mitzvah, or to love yourself, or to do the right thing, or to be extra generous, or whatever it is for you that is your real avodah, maybe all of that effort, all of that energy, that's going into the earth to produce crazy miracles in the future. You never know, right? Okay, so here we are. So there he is. Yosef runs out. And by the way, another really super cool midrash, of course, it's like this whole balagan, and she's screaming and she's telling everybody the slave was trying to seduce me. And if Potiphar himself knows, like, please, this isn't really happening, but how does he really know that it's his wife kind of doing exaggerations or just blatant lies? Is it says that one of the handmaids in the palace had a baby in the garden. And as Potiphar was walking through the garden trying to figure out what to do, this 11-month-old baby starts speaking prophecy and saying, it's not true. Yosef didn't do any of it. And it turns out that the adopted daughter of Potiphar and Potiphar's wife, named Osnat, who will soon be the future wife of Yosef, which is why in the first place Potiphar's wife thought she really had to be with Yosef. She saw in the stars, she saw in astrology, she was meant to have a future with Yosef. It's true, but it was through her adopted daughter Osnat. And we know Osnat from last week is the daughter that was given away after the rape of Dinah and Shechem. So Osnat is there as a little girl yet to marry Yosef, and Osnat goes to her dad and says, Dad, everything that baby prophet is saying, it's true. Yosef is innocent. Nonetheless, Yosef has to go to jail. Now, again, this is not a small deal to go to jail for 10 years and what turns out to be 12 years. But there he is. He's in the pit. It says that the jail was actually Potiphar's personal dungeon that he had dug out underneath his mansion. And there's even descriptions of what this dungeon was like. It was like a big pit underground with just a little light at the top. And that within this pit, there were like pits off to the side. And that's where Yosef lived all these years. Now, Baruch Hashem, Hashem was with Yosef. It even says it in the Pshat. And what happens is Yosef is put in charge of the prison. He doesn't even have guards. And he gets to know what's going on down there. But geez Louise, I mean, Yosef was growing. Yosef was becoming, he was getting into his personal kingship while in the pits of despair. And for 10 years. So Hashem, if any of us are in the pits of despair, please let us know there is an end in sight, and please make it shorter than 10 years. And in this parsha, we have the story of the cupbearer and the baker, who are Pharaoh's servants, who have these crazy dreams that Yosef interprets. And this is going to be his entrance. But I'll tell you what I feel about this entrance into Yosef's getting out of jail and rising to power again. Here's my take on it from this week, L'chaim. The interpretation was that the baker, for whom there was a pebble in the bread, he's going to die. But the wine bearer, there was a fly in the cup. This is why they got into jail in the first place. That Pharaoh is going to restore his trust to him and restore his position. And so here's what I'm thinking about all of this. Pharaoh has to restore his trust, and where Pharaoh can restore his trust is that place where we could bring that person back into his life And when I looked into it, I realized that a lot of the parsha is about trust. Is Potiphar trusting Yosef? Are the brothers trusting Yosef? Is Yosef trusting the brothers? And so I thought about this kind of overarching theme about trust and faith. And the idea that Hanukkah coming tomorrow night and us really analyzing, where is it in our lives that we have lost trust in other people, that we have lost trust in ourselves, that we have lost trust in God, and what would it look like if we restored our trust to each other? What would it take for us? Why aren't we? And what happens if we can? So I started asking a lot of people about their relationship with faith and trust, because essentially trust is this idea that even when we're in the pits, even when we're going through the craziest, gnarliest life experiences and hell, that God is sort of behind it. You know, I was asking people, what do you think about trust? And so someone said today, you know, the more I know God, the more I trust God, because I know about his midot, about God's, let's say, characteristics, the more I can put trust into it. And so here's what we're doing by actually studying Torah. We're getting to know God. As Rav Shalom Brat Zatzal wrote in his book about Exodus, which is a model for personal growth, it says that what is Anochi? It's an acronym. We've discussed it before, but it's Ana Ktavit Nafshi Yahavi, which is Aramaic for Ana Nafshit, the soul that I have placed. Ktavit Yahavi, within these words, is being revealed here. That what is the Torah? It's revealing God's soul through the words. That's Anochi. Ana Nafshit Ktavit Yahavi. I've placed my soul within these words, so that when we're learning Torah, we're learning about the essence of God. And listen to what we really learn in this week's parsha. It says that while all of these events were taking place, Hashem was preparing the light of Messiah. This is from Breshit Rabbah Pei Hey Bet. It says that Hashem is guiding all these events of our lives, right? He's guiding the tribe selling Yosef. He's guiding Yosef's experience with mourning for his dad and his dad mourning for him. He's guiding Yehuda through this crazy circumstance of his wife dying and his sons dying and having to sleep with a harlot, and who's his daughter-in-law, oy, and having to come forward in front of the whole community. So I want to read from you again, just from this book that I talk to you about often, and it's from page 108. It says Owner's Decision. And it says like this. Woo! When we read the story of how the 10 brothers were sold their brother Yosef, can you imagine how broken everybody was? It says, actually, can you imagine, on a different page, can you imagine if someone had recorded the crying of the Jews when the Holy Temple was destroyed and we went into exile? Can you imagine the sounds of crying going on in that moment? Says, let me tell you, friends, based on the Zohar, it doesn't compare to the crying of the holy tribes. So, like, here we are. The tribes are, maybe they had a nice dinner, but at some point when they have to meet Yaakov and see Yaakov's pain about the loss of Yosef, everybody's hysterically crying. The brothers are hysterically crying. Yaakov is hysterically crying. Yosef is begging everybody, please don't take me. Right? He's hysterically crying. The 10 tribes, they're repenting. They're sitting around day and night crying. Then Yosef's in prison and he has to deal with that. Then, like we said with Yehuda, everything is going wrong. So the Midrash asks, and again, and this is from Midrash Rabbah 85, he says, what was God doing this whole time? The Ribono Shel Olam was preparing the redemption of the world. He was preparing the light of Mashiach. That this Midrash is saying that God, through all the difficulties of our life, is preparing the light of our redemption. That everything difficult you went through this year, what was God doing while you were sitting there, let's say, crying or stressing or not knowing what to do, what's happening in the future? God is preparing the light for Hanukkah. God is preparing the light that's going to heal us. God is preparing these messianic tikkunim so we could reap the benefits. And so it says, why? Why? He says here in this example, he says, imagine him standing by the Rockefeller Center and I see people just destroying it. It's terrible to tear down such a beautiful building. Why are you destroying it? But then imagine you see the owner of Rockefeller Center and he's the one destroying the builder. then you say, aha, I understand. He wants to make an even more beautiful building. And so it says here, and this is what God was doing while Yaakov and all the brothers were crying, and while everything seemed to be destroyed, God was busy building an even more beautiful world. And this is a world in which we can reflect on our hatred towards our brothers, and our jealousy, and our chosenness. And if we're using our chosenness to really be a light unto the world and to let everybody know how special they are, or if we are assimilating into the cultures that bring us down and steal our light, right? That God, through all of this, is giving us the opportunity to get into those car crashes and to say, okay, what if we could all just tell each other that Hakol min hashamayim? And so I told you that I would tell you about this accidental prank call from my first grade teacher. So there I am in my house, and I get a call from a phone number that I don't know, and I almost never pick up my phone anymore. I'm really happy with this new thing of less phone time. But I had this instinct to pick it up, and all of a sudden, you cannot mistake this woman. God bless you, Rivka Shaked. You should live until 120 if anyone from Sinai is watching. Wow, we know what it was like to have such a tzadikah. We had a tzadikah. We really had a tzadikah for our first grade teacher. And all of a sudden, well, if I was, so this is 31 years ago. She's my first grade teacher. And she's like, oh, Bubale, I really need your dad's number. And I see she's calling from Los Angeles. And I'm like, Rivkale? She's going, yes, Bubale, Bubale. She's this beautiful Israeli accent. I need your father's phone number. I need to get in touch with him. And I'm realizing she thinks she's talking to my sister who's in LA. Because my sister ended up working at that school. My holy sister Danielle. So I was like, Rivkale, I don't know if you know this, but you actually called Nili. And she goes, Nili, oh my God, I didn't know I called you. I was trying to call your sister. And all of a sudden she becomes Eliyahu Navi. And she says, and I say to her, Rivkale, I want to tell you what happened. I have remembered this thing that you taught me for a long time, because when I first started doing tshuva like 13 years ago, I got all I got all arrogant. Me and Yosef, we had a trip. And I was like, the holier than thou, self-righteous thing. And kind of looking down on other people. And then I went to go work in my old synagogue, which is conservative, and I was calling myself Orthodox, and I was having trouble seeing the light in everybody. And she says, Nili, the Orthodox, they are the keepers of the Torah. And the Reform, they keep the Jews from falling off the end of the world. And the conservative, they are the glue between. You choose which one you like, and you do it with grace. You do it beautifully, and that's it. And so I said, Rivka, I want to let you know, I've given that over to so many students. I thought it was such a beautiful way of loving each other, of not having sinat chinam, of getting rid of the sin'ah, of spreading the light, of really embracing each other and stopping to judge. And she says, that's true, Nili, but now I'm going to tell you something even more important. Write this down. And it was like, I didn't expect this phone call. I didn't expect this word. She said, by the way, I'm calling from America, and this isn't a free call. I'm paying so much for it, and I don't care because I want you to hear this. And once I tell you it, I want you to write it down. She goes, Nili, that you are a vehicle for Hashem. And the second you think it's about you, you lost the whole thing. Did you hear me? Write this down. You are a vehicle for Hashem. And the second you think any of this is about you, you've lost the mission. And I was like, what is going on this week? I'm getting accidental prank calls from my first grade Hebrew teacher to teach me a lesson about humility and about giving it up to God. And that is something Yosef does get credit for. Is all through all of this, he's saying, I'm an Ivri. This is Hashem interpreting the dream. It's not me. This is God. And that's why Yosef was able to soar, and everything he touched turned to gold. Because the whole time he knew it wasn't about him. It was about turning to God and saying, I'm just a vehicle for this. And therefore Yosef could continue to shine and do his work even through all the difficulties. Whew. Wow. So I want to bless us that as we're moving into Hanukkah, and as we're really in a crazy time, it's true. that we take a moment and reflect on Parshat Vayeishev and all of these crazy stories in it, from all the way to the coat and the dreams and the brothers hating him and then throwing him to the pit and him getting sold, and the story of Yehuda and Tamar and Yehuda having to come forth, and then him getting seduced, and then him getting thrown into jail, and then the interpreter of dreams. And here we are left at this cliffhanger that we stop and we realize that through all of the circumstances of our life, through all the pits and the snakes and the scorpions and the car crashes and the insane tikkunim that all of us are going through, these messianic fixings, that I challenge us and I question us if we can believe that God is preparing the light of Mashiach through this whole thing for all of us. Because that's what it says. That's what our tribes say. It says that God is preparing the light. So may we take this trust and faith and restore our faith in Hashem, whatever that means, whatever it's going to take us. And may we be blessed to sit in front of the Hanukkah candles tomorrow night and every night, asking ourselves, what might it be like if I actually trusted God about this circumstance and that circumstance? You could talk it out loud. But this parsha really begs us to look at the challenges, to look at the hatred, to look at the jealousy, to look at inferiority, to look at superiority, to look at brotherly love, to look at our sexual behaviors, to look and see if we're in this victim mentality where like everything's happening to me, or if we're willing to own up and take responsibility like Yehuda, and then start to make the changes in our life that will, then we can co-create with God in bringing in this light. So Hakol Min Hashamayim, may we all have the most beautiful Hanukkah. May we all realize, like my first grade teacher said when she accidentally called me, that we have to know that we are a vehicle for God, and as long as we know that, we're going to soar. But the second we think it's about us, then we're confused, because we're all a part of this team here that's bringing it together for Hashem. For the great day. So I bless us with strength through these messianic tikkunim, because just like Joseph in this parsha, it could be a challenge. But we're doing it, guys. We really are. We're doing the final tikkunim that have been calling upon us for millennia, for our whole lives, to stand through and keep our heads up like Yosef HaTzadik and ask Hashem, really, Hashem, what, tell me how I'm giving you back your dreams by seeing what would be trusting in this, and then by blessing my own light and the light of everyone around me. Hashem, help me give you back your dreams by trusting in you. Hashem, you give us that faith, please. Help us to keep studying Torah, and please, Hashem, may we have the sweetest Hanukkah at the Beit HaMikdash. Thank you for listening, and Laila Tov. Thank you, JIC. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, viewers. Peace in, homies.